The last 20 years can be called the Geek era. What started as a slight interest in comic books or video games-based movies in the end of 2000s resulted into a full-grown obsession with spandex warriors nowadays. Some actors were the pioneers in portraying comic book characters, some just jumped in the hype train after it hit big. Some of these actors succeeded and became stars, others tried and failed. Karl Urban is all of the above. The percentage of his films linked to comics or video games is massive, probably more than any other actor has, besides those who kept playing some particular comic book character for years. So what are these movies? Which of them made Karl sorta a geek culture pioneer in the world of cinema? How did the movies he was in influence and even reinvent the genre? And why didn't it help him ride the hype wave earlier? You're watching Hollywood Lore, and let's dive in. Karl Urban was born in New Zealand, and that's where his career actually started. In 1994, maestro Sam Raimi and his friend Rob Tapert were producing Hercules: The Legendary Journeys, and rumors say it was them who brought the show to New Zealand. Karl got 2 roles in the project, Cupid and Julius Caesar. In the popular spin-off, Xena warrior Princess Karl participated as well, portraying the same characters. Urban was immediately noticed by thousands of teenage girls worldwide who were squealing and blow-drying their pants during Cupid scenes. Karl later said these projects were vital for New Zealand's movie industry and greatly upskilled the local actors and the crew. So Peter Jackson was pretty satisfied with the local crew's skills and picked a lot of natives for filming Lord of the Rings. Surprisingly, Karl was picked by Jackson not because of Hercules or Xena, but due to a small comedy movie he participated in a bit later, The Price of Milk. It was directed by Harry Sinclair, and he was good friends with Peter Jackson, so both Karl and Harry ended up starring in Lord of the Rings. Harry portrayed Isildur, and Karl landed the role of Yomer. Now, Lord of the Rings is a classic, and its Dreamcast is a role model for every movie. Like, it's pretty hard to be noticed there, especially not being a part of the infamous Fellowship of the Ring. Back in the day, Karl managed to drive some attention, but not the one he probably wanted. For example, during a press tour in Japan, he and Viggo Mortensen went and bought half a store full of anime robots. Men of high culture indeed. Viggo obviously bought them for his son, but Karl's son Hunter just started walking. Look at that face. That's what a happy toy nerd looks like. The audience unfortunately didn't remember Karl, and nowadays when people realize it was him, they usually get stunned for a while. Probably it's because of his strange blonde looks. But it's so unfair. Everyone thinks Legolas is badass, dealing with an Oliphant single-handed, but everyone forgets that Eomer took down 2 casually with just 1 spear, and was chill about it, like nothing just happened. Leave a like if you're Team Eomer too. Being such a Chad affected Karl's next roles. Except maybe the one in Ghost Ship, where he played a pretty average Joe. The movie was filmed in Australia, so Karl was nearby and attended the audition for the project. Ghost Ship wasn't a flop and grossed $68 million with a budget of 20. However, all the participating actors despised the movie and claimed they had signed up for something more solid, but it ended up being a B-horror nonsense with a few okay scenes. Urban was the only one who didn't complain. He saw the movie as a breakthrough and had no questions about its quality. After the success of Lord of the Rings, Urban chose 2 high-budget projects, The Chronicles of Riddick and The Bourne Supremacy. In both, he portrayed action villains who just poker-facedly did their jobs. Later, the actor said filming Bourne was fun, as he could drift like crazy on the streets of Moscow and Berlin on Mercedes, but actually his part in the movie was relatively small. In The Chronicles of Riddick, it wasn't of great significance as well, but Karl had a potential to turn into the main antagonist there. The film flopped hard though, and these plans went down the drain. The eponymous video game released in parallel with The Chronicles of Riddick was well received but didn't help the movie's box office. 10 years later, Riddick's fan base whined their way to a follow-up, but the budget for it was significantly lower. Fun fact here. While filming Riddick, Urban developed a geek chemistry with Vin Diesel, who was a big fan of Dungeons & Dragons. So they dragged Judi Dench and Thandie Newton into playing D&D with them during waiting time on set. Despite Riddick's failure in 2004, Karl Urban's career was still fine, and he continued to receive regular offers in Hollywood. That's when he decided to play some good guys and join the movie adaptation of the video game Doom. Talks about such a project started way back in the late 90s, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was considered for the lead role. so the film's budget was expected to be way larger. Time passed. Arnie ran away to rural California, and the producers chose another ripped dude to play John Grimm. A twist here, it wasn't Karl Urban at first, but Dwayne Johnson. Dwayne turned down the protagonist role, believing his talent would be better showcased as a badass, ruthless squad leader. Only after that, the studio signed Urban, and it turned out to be somewhat a bittersweet luck for Karl. Doom was the most anticipated video game adaptation at that time. It sure was, as the public was hyped up by expectations since the 90s. Mostly it was Doom fans. There were a lot of them, and they were eager to see how their favorite shooter would transform into a movie. Who knows how many of these guys were among the test audiences, but the previews were a disaster and led to significant cuts for the theatrical release. Later, some of the cut material was restored for the DVD release, but most of the scenes requiring additional post-production remained on the cutting room floor. Luckily, the legendary first-person scene wasn't cut or distorted in any way. Doom was a first-person shooter video game, so the creators of the film felt something first-person should be in the adaptation as well to tickle the senses of true players. That scene is actually something that stands out even nowadays, lasting over 5 minutes and giving the fans the experience they were probably asking for. Not a video game, not a movie, more likely an amusement park ride. First-person shots in action movies were before this one, true, but mostly from a fixed position. Moving the camera convincingly enough for the viewers to feel like they're in the main character's body was indeed something new. With all that reflections of Karl Urban, his hands on screen and so on, all that required some seriously insane CGI magic and a hell of a lot of takes. Just shooting that one scene took 14 days. David Fincher also tried something like this in Alien 3. Remember the scenes from the aliens' perspective? No guns, with plenty of cuts, but still. Maybe if Alien 3 didn't end up in production hell, this scene would become something outstanding like the one in Doom. By the way, don't forget to check out our video about the Alien franchise. No jump scares, I promise. The 5-minute first-person scene in Doom managed to hit some growing-up cinematographers right in the chest, but couldn't sell the movie to the masses. Mediocre script, endless pitch-black scenes, lame visual effects at times, monsters that look like half-digested burgers, and very high expectations. All that contributed to the massive Doom flop. The film grossed only $56 million with a budget of $60. Dwayne Johnson took the main hit and received a nomination for the Golden Raspberry Award for being the main star of the movie. Well deserved, as Rock took both BFGs from the set, leaving none for Karl, who was also a big Doom fan. Tech greatness and geek vibe didn't help Urban's career this time. The Pathfinder movie that followed shortly after dragged Karl down even further. The adventure film with an adult rating and a $45 million budget had Urban as their main star. Pathfinder was supposed to be released in 2006, but the test audiences weren't satisfied, and that led to multiple edits. The delays were constant, something was always screwed up, so the movie finally managed to hit theaters only a year later and immediately bombed, grossing only $30 million. According to Karl, at this point he was seriously thinking about leaving the industry and doing something different for the living. No decent offers, the auditions sucked, and the movies he was actually invited to were a complete joke. For 2 years, he took part only in small projects. In late 2007, J.J. Abrams was getting ready to film a cinematic reboot of Star Trek and was looking for actors for the project. Urban heard about it and immediately rushed off to the audition, being a big fan of the old show. Apparently, Urban was so hyped about portraying Dr. McCoy that he perfectly nailed the audition and had an offer within only an hour. According to Karl, Star Trek became his saving grace. That's actually true. More importantly, in Star Trek, Urban took an anti-action chill pill and was finally able to reveal another, more ironic layer of himself to the audiences. The first Star Trek wasn't a massive box office success, grossing $385 million with a budget of $150. But it was well received by the fan community, and in 2009, it became a hit on home media, selling 13 million copies and earning another $200 million. Everyone was all over Urban's McCoy and highlighted him more than probably all other actors in the movie. After this success, Karl's mailbox was full of offers again. He chose 3 projects, Red, and soon The Darkness, and Priest. Red was a project based on DC Comics and had a solid cast, including Bruce Willis, John Malkovich, Helen Mirren, and Morgan Freeman. Such an actor's hodgepodge. The film was successful and had a sequel. Without Karl, though, as he had a supporting role in the first one, and his character wasn't needed in the follow-up. Priest was loosely based on the Korean manhwa, which was inspired by a video game. Double bingo for Urban right here. In a duo with him was Paul Bettany, who decided to step into the role of priest, protecting people from a total douche black hat, portrayed by Urban. It wasn't the first movie where Karl played a villain, but in this one, let's admit, he had some badass anti-hero vibe, the harbinger of what we observe nowadays. Badass vibe didn't help the priest though, and it flopped, costing $60 million and earning only $78. All the great plans for a priest trilogy were forgotten, and Paul Bettany ran off to fail with Johnny Depp and voice Jarvis. Karl wasn't tired of comics as well, and decided to take the lead role in the reboot of the infamous Judge Dredd. This one should have been a hit, making its creators and Urban big stars. Everything just screams about it when you watch the film and look at the critics and audience's reactions. But the universe had some other plans. Judge Dredd is a cult classic comic series, one of the first cyberpunk comics that strongly affected the genre. Movie makers couldn't overlook such brilliance and released the first cinematic adaptation in 1995 with Sylvester Stallone as Judge Joseph Dredd. The movie flopped, received extremely poor reviews from both critics and viewers, and got Stallone a Golden Raspberry nomination for such an outstanding performance. Some say it's the absolute worst of Stallone during all his career, but probably he brought it on himself. Director Danny Cannon strongly claims it should have been a completely different movie, but Stallone flexed his influence during production and changed a lot in the script, adding humor, hero blockbuster vibes, making Rob Schneider's character even more annoying than firstly intended, and insisting on removing Dredd's infamous helmet. Dredd creator John Wagner was irritated by the final result, as was the director and everyone else. In the reboot, the director Pete Travis decided to learn from these mistakes. He cast Karl, who was totally cool with always wearing a helmet, as he understood its importance for Dredd's character. Like, the dude is an ultimate faceless justice, why should he remove the damn thing? Urban decided to show the human side of the main hero using other methods, like, shockingly, some actual acting skills. The creator of the comic book series was invited to participate in the project, so he could detect any crap. The visual style was updated to make the future seem more convincing, like the huge mega blocks looked pretty realistic and badass in comparison with what was presented in the comics. Even more than that, the creators of the movie hired extremely talented composer Paul Leonard Morgan, who managed to reinvent the sound of the cyberpunk genre in Dredd. He avoided Vangelis-like synthwave, which was a base sound for any cyberpunk cultural piece until then, and replaced it with merciless rave jam. And it fit perfectly, highlighting the dark brutality of the cyberpunk realm. Like, with such a soundtrack, you definitely know Dredd's universe is not the one in which tears are lost in rain. It's not indeed. An interesting fact here, while the sound of action scenes was set, they needed something for episodes with slow-mo drug that reduced the user's perception of time to 1% of normal. The visuals for those were chosen, and they are amazing, by the way. So some music effects of similar quality were needed, and Paul Leonard nailed it in an extremely unusual manner. He took one of Justin Bieber's songs, slowed it down eightfold, and hit Nirvana right there. The composer used this audio result as his main inspiration for slow-mo sequences, composing a short similar melody himself, and then recording it 8 times slower. In his interviews, Karl always claims he likes Dredd's universe a lot, and he likes the movie, as well as the audiences who managed to actually watch it, the critics and the creator of the Dredd universe, John Wagner. The reinvention of the cyberpunk sound and visuals in Dredd influenced the genre, resulting in the famous video game Cyberpunk 2077 as we know it. Paul Leonard Morgan was invited as a composer there as well, exactly because of his work in the film. And no one's hiding the visuals in the game are strongly inspired by Dredd movies' aesthetics. Did all that awesomeness help the film to collect decent box office, though? Well, not really. Dredd was released in 2012 and grossed $41 million with a budget around $40–45 million. Karl Urban is sure that the movie is a very good example of the crappy marketing campaign, and its box office failure has nothing to do with its quality. He says that nobody knew about the movie until it was released, and if it would receive deserved promotion, the movie would be a success. That's probably the most realistic explanation, as was later shown by the DVD release. During only the first week in North America alone, they sold 750,000 copies of Dredd. After that, Karl and J.J. Abrams attempted to launch the high-budget series Almost Human, a mix of the future, police, and android stuff, where Urban portrayed a cop who's not happy about teaming up with Android. But back in 2013, it was canceled after the first season due to low ratings. Fox did the same stupidity as they did with Firefly back in the day, mixing up episodes' order to hold the intrigue as long as possible. The second episode was originally the fifth, and the eighth episode was originally the second. Of course, the viewer got confused and clicked away. There was still Star Trek left for Karl, but the second and third parts didn't perform as well at the box office as the first one, so they stopped Star Trek production line for a while, and Urban faced some complicated times. Again, since 2016, the mainstream audience would have noticed him probably only in minor thriller Loft and as a side character in Thor Ragnarok. The actor later said initially it was more of him in Thor, but some scenes were eventually cut out. Who knows what would have happened to Karl Urban's career after that point? One can speculate endlessly about it, predicting B-movies for him, episodic roles, or even finishing career and moving to some New Zealand's lighthouse to carve wooden birds. But there was a role left for him, the role of Billy Butcher. This one might have never happened in Karl's life. The development of comic book series The Boys started all the way back in 2008, 10 years before the real production actually took place. Initially, it should have been Columbia Pictures movie with Adam McKay as a director. The director of The Big Short, Vice, and Don't Look Up had some amazing ideas regarding The Boys, but these amazing ideas were disliked by the studio, so the project was abandoned. The adaptation rights were passed around for years, before finally Amazon picked them up, hoping to replicate the success of hit genre dramas like The Walking Dead and Stranger Things. Is it a big spoiler to say right now that The Boys managed to do that? The show attracted 8 million viewers in its first days of release, and the numbers kept growing, making The Boys the most successful original program on Prime Video. Later, the show appeared in many lists of various TV Top 100, in some of them being even more successful than previously mentioned Stranger Things. Even more than that, the series received critical acclaim. Controversial themes explored in the show divided some viewers, but probably that made The Boys even better. The main hype instantly surrounded two characters' opposition, Billy Butcher and Homelander. Both actors are from New Zealand, and both played in Xena Warrior Princess. With The Boys, Karl got his well-deserved mainstream attention. He found this perfect mix of his previous characters, the exact proportions that make the audiences crazy and eager for more. Some comedic vibe, some dramatic vibe, and a pile of badass anti-hero charisma. The Boys and Karl are doing great. There are hopes that Amazon might revive Dredd with Karl. The script for the series was ready in 2021 already, and has already been pitched to all the major streaming players. At the time, Karl confirmed that he'd be happy to take part. Apart from that, he got a promising role in the upcoming Mortal Kombat 2, where he will play Johnny Cage. Imagine playing the character inspired by the great Belgian talent. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to seeing his split. So what do we have here? Karl played in more comic franchises than most Marvel stars, participated in some films based on video games and not the worst ones, which is already an achievement. And his transformation into McCoy in Star Trek made Leonard Nimoy cry out of joy. This is no joke. What's this if not the top of a nerd's dream? For the upcoming years, Karl has plenty of work, as he just discovered his perfect image. Badass and ruthless squad leader who fights disgusting creatures. Wait a second. God damn it, Karl. Anyway, the video ends now, so check out our other video about how Robert Downey Jr. was a bad boy, was cursed by Hollywood, and managed to rise like a phoenix. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you around.